It's time for another Talk About Nothing. And this week I'm going to have someone on who I called Johanna for the first year that I knew her before I actually knew how to say her name. But we're going to talk with the lovely Johanna here coming up next. Hey, what's up, bookworms? We are back for more Talk About Nothing. And I just kind of did the introduction before the introduction. So I'm going to let Johanna do the introduction now. How are you doing this night?
Hi, I'm good. I didn't even realize you mispronounced my name for so long. I honestly never even realize it when people do that.
I think it's you and Yolene were the two that I was like, am I saying their names right? You know, and the thing was, like, I'd watch your videos and I would never see you guys actually say your name out loud. So yeah. I think it was actually Philip who told me there's no H, but you know, Philip's always good.
Oh, that's nice of him. Yeah.
So what's new? What's happening on your side of the internet?
Not a lot. So as far as what I'm reading right now, we were just talking right before we got live about what I'm reading. So I am right towards the very, very, very end of Royal Assassin.
Oh, okay. I figured Robin Hobb might come up this episode.
Yes.
That's what you were reading on your last video. So, you know, when it comes to Robin Hobb, it's weird. I really, really liked the first book of Assassin's Apprentice a lot, because I love coming of age and stuff like that. Royal Assassin, I love me some court politics. And Royal Assassin, I was kind of like, on. So I'll be interested to see what you think about it.
Yeah, that's what I remember you saying that you were a bit conflicted about that third book, right? You didn't care for it as much.
I don't know.
Well, we'll see where I land. Yeah,
it was kind of slow-ish. I don't know. I'm fine with slow, and it's nothing that's going to keep me from reading more Hobb stuff, you know. But you know, it was like, okay, I think I'm going to take a little break now, especially when there's this whole series that comes after it where it's you're on a boat.
And, yeah, I know your feelings about boats and Moby Dick. I remember.
You know, hey, that brings up a good one. You did a video recently about nautical books.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, I feel attacked.
Oh
no. No, but for real, I mean, I don't know. It's because when I was younger, I read Treasure Island. And I loved it. I thought Treasure Island was amazing. One of the first books, that and The Hobbit were like the first books I read without pictures in it. So I loved it quite a bit. So I have to think it was my PTSD. Well, I think back to back I did Old Man the Sea and Moby Dick. Oh. And I was just like, I'm done with the ocean for a while. And I don't know if that's just something that's never went away, because every time I read a book like JRR Revelations, love JRR Revelations, except the one book that takes place on a boat. So I'm nervous about Live Ship Traders. I'm nervous about it.
Yeah. You know, you're not the only one, though. I've heard a lot of people say that they don't really care for nautical fantasy. That seems to be a common thing. And I'm just one weirdo who's kind of curious about it. And I haven't read a lot of it. So that was why I did that video, because I thought these are books I think I want to read, but who knows? Maybe I'll get sick of the sea at some point. I just know that when I was a kid, I used to have a pirate Lego set. And, and it was really fun for me as a kid. And so I don't know. I was just trying to bring back childhood memories, I guess.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I love like movies and TV shows, like Black Sails, like one of my favorite shows ever, you know, and I still love to watch Pirates of the Caribbean with the kids and stuff. So I don't know. It's really, really weird how that works. But by the way, you crossed 2,000 subs recently. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. Because it seems like you just hit 1,000 not that long ago. So that's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome to see that.
So why did you get into this whole Booktube thing? That's always a fun conversation. What made you say, I can do this?
Yeah. I didn't have that initial thought for a long time. I was a longtime viewer of Booktube for a couple of years there. And honestly, I found out about Booktube. When I found Booktube, most of what I found on Booktube was sort of the YA circles of fantasy Booktube. And I didn't really know that there were any. I hadn't found your channel yet. You know how algorithms are. Like, I didn't really know there was a whole huge branch of Booktube that was dedicated towards adult fantasy. So I was reading a lot of more YA fantasy, and that was fun. I enjoyed it. But then somewhere along the way, and I always thought, there's no way I could ever do this.
Can you leave, please? Can you close the door? Thank you. This is the great when we're doing this live. This is awesome. Bye.
It's wonderful.
Bye. Close the door. Thank you.
Yeah.
Never happens. And then I do one live. This is great. This is great.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to you there. I
Yeah.
promise.
No worries. Yeah. No worries. So
Everyone kind of has that story of like, they just think, hey, I see this other person doing this. And, I mean, if I'm being honest, I feel like I could do that better than them. I mean, that's just a lot of the stories, a lot of the feedback I got is people say they feel like they could do it better than people who were already doing it. And that's why they got into it. Did you ever feel like that? Because I never was like, I'm better than this person.
No. Well, I mean, my first initial thought, because I was finding more of the YA people, was I'm way too old for this. And yeah, just a lot of reasons. I don't own a ton of books, on my shelf. I use the library. I don't know, just always, and I'm a slow reader. I don't binge 14 books in a month, that kind of thing. No offense to anybody who does.
I don't know how
You're
people do
amazing
that.
if you do that. I'm just somebody who tends to be a bit slow. So I thought there's no way I could do this. I made up all these reasons why I couldn't do it. And not saying that this is the exception to all these rules, but then I found Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And I thought, oh my goodness, a booktuber who's a bit older, and I loved Alan's channel. I binged watched his entire, like all of his videos. And I never did that before. I never went back and found a booktuber I loved and went back and watched a bunch of their older videos. And I just thought, this guy's amazing. And then it was around that time that I found Philip Chase. And then not long after that, I found out about you. And so I just found, oh, wow, there are people who are talking about adult fantasy books. And there's some actually very intelligent conversation happening here. And even still, I didn't think I would really get involved. But what happened was I started getting interactive in the comments section, which I didn't do before. But because of Alan being so encouraging and commenting back on the comments that I sent him, I got more involved in the community, joining Discords. And then actually, when I started my channel, it was almost kind of a joke. I thought, because I looked on my channel one day, or my YouTube profile, and I saw that I had a couple of subscribers. And I thought that was really funny. So I kind of joked into Discord one day. I said, if I make it to the milestone of 5 subscribers, I'll start a channel. And then a few people subscribed. And then I thought, oh, what the heck? I'll just do a Q&A. And so I did a Q&A for 5 subscribers.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 3 years. But the thing is, like, if you go to my YouTube channel, you see it says I started in 2012. So it was really shocking to me when I had 50 subscribers for 7 years, and all of a sudden, boom, overnight. It's like, what happened here? I'm used to getting 12 or 13 views per video. What is this? So yeah.
That's pretty cool. What about you? How did you get started? I know you said you started a podcast.
Well, first I was podcasting about sports, and it just, I don't know how much you know about how that gets, but just all your feedback is completely opposite of Booktube. It is 100% negative. Everything you say, you're the dumbest person, your team sucks, and all that stuff, just how sports people are. And so then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to talk about movies and video games and TV and music and comic book stuff. And me and a friend did that for a few years. And it was kind of fun, but it was just it was kind of at the turning point where I was like, every week I talk about what I'm reading on there. And he's like, yeah, I haven't read any of this stuff, so I don't really have any feedback. So I was going to do this on the side. And it was right around the same time that he had a baby and he was buying a house and stuff. Life was growing up and we weren't doing it as often. So I started doing this on the side, and I had no idea that it was going to become what it became. So it made it easier, I think, to kind of walk away from that and start this. And that's why I don't have a problem filling out the blank space, because I podcasted forever. So
you're so good at that, by the way. You are so good at that. Yeah, your voice, you have a way of I don't know, it's the way that you kind of come to a cadence at the end of sentences. I just love it. I'm like, you kind of talk and then you say, and this is why you should read this book. Da, da, da. And there's a rhythm and a flow to it. And I'm like, yes, that sounds so cool.
I think for years back in the sports days, when I listened to sports talk radio a lot, and it used to just drive me crazy when I hear the hosts be like, and say, they say, after every word. It drove me nuts. So I was like, I'm going to make sure that I don't do that when I speak. So that's kind of where I came from. Hey, here's a question for you. I've never heard of your channel. Have you ever read Wheel of Time?
I haven't read Wheel of Time. No, I have not.
Do you plan to?
I don't know. I don't honestly feel a call towards it right now. I'll never say never, I know that it's had some mixed reviews recently from a lot of people I know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, but not sure yet. Maybe someday. Who knows?
That's like me. I never say never on these things,
Yeah,
but I
never
mean,
say never.
the fact that when I started this channel is when I was starting Wheel of Time. That's it. It kind of goes hand in hand. That's where a lot of people, found the channel or whatever. And that's kind of what you talked about when I first started doing this. I didn't know that this talking about books on YouTube was a thing. I really didn't until I had already started doing it. And that was when I was like, okay, well, everybody's talking about Daniel Green in my comments. What is this? So I looked up. I was like, holy hell, people do this like all the time. This is great. So that's why I started like just kind of pumping up the content, and here we are. But yeah, it's weird. To me, it was like, yeah, but it is still really, really young. So you talked about finding Philip. I think when I found Philip's channel, not only was I like, oh great, there's someone my age, but I was like, oh great, I got to actually try harder because this guy is actually super intelligent. He's talking about like themes and stuff. I was like, I got to actually start trying a little harder here. So
yeah,
it's kind of funny how that happens.
The first video I found of Philip's was his Origins of Fantasy video, and I was just so impressed and got me thinking on so many different levels. Yeah, and the other thing too is that I've loved fantasy, of course, since I was a teen. I'm sure you have as well, or even younger. And even though I grew up with a lot of people who read fantasy, I felt like I was the only one who ever wanted to talk about it. So it felt so exciting to me to find this community of people that loved to talk about books because, like I said, even though I knew a bunch of people who love to read, it just seemed like a whole other thing to want to talk about it. So
if I knew anybody that wanted to read, none of them wanted to read fantasy. They didn't take fantasy or sci-fi or horror seriously. It was about nonfiction and stuff like that. So it was definitely something. I had left the workforce to go back to school full time, and I was like, I've got to talk to some adults here because it's like all I am doing is talking to my at the time 3-year-old, and I said this is just not working for me. So it's kind of like, okay, cool. Maybe if I get like a dozen subscribers who will actually talk to me, cool. So I never expected to kind of.
Oh, you would have loved the people I hung out with when I was younger then, because the group of friends I had in high school, they were people who had reread Dune several times, and they were really.
I had the friends that were like, "Why are you reading that?" That's what they would ask me. Is that an assignment or something? I'm like, no.
Yeah. And actually, when I read Dune the first time, which took me a lot longer in life to actually finally get to it, I remember feeling like I understood my generation better. I felt like I understood my generation, especially of men, better, oddly, through that book.
Well, I never get tired of hearing positive Dune talk. Like, I'm sure you probably don't get tired of hearing positive Malazon talk, right? Then you talk about how you found Philip's channel. I found him because he actually had done a Dark Tower video, and people knew how much I liked it. And they said, hey, you should check this guy out. And I did, and I was like, that's pretty good. And then I saw he had the thing about Malazon. I was like, okay, well, I'm interested in reading this. So, yeah, curse you, Philip. You're the one who brought me, to the Malazon steps. But
that was cool. Yeah, honestly, even though Philip has influenced me to read a lot of really great authors, including Robin Hobb, I actually was reading Malazon before I found out about Philip's channel, so it was kind of a happy surprise that he was into the series after I had already kind of started it. So that was kind of cool.
Bless you for not saying and like every 5 seconds. I do transcription for work, and this drives me nuts. I feel you. It is terrible. It's terrible.
Oh, man.
Everyone's talking about something about the rhythm of the mic, and I don't know what that means.
Because I was saying that you have like a rhythm to your sound.
I have a good rhythm. The rhythm of the mic. That's pretty good, Philip. That's pretty good. That's almost as good as Dear Dr. Fantasy, which I made up for. That's pretty good.
I pay attention to things like that. So I think that you really nailed a certain way of speaking. It makes sense to me that you were doing podcasting before you were doing Booktube, because you do.
Yeah, just waiting for Audible to call. Just waiting for him.
Yeah.
Call me Audible. So when we talk about Malazon here, now you finished Cripple God earlier this year, right? So you're done.
Actually, at the very end, the last couple of days of last year. So it was really special to end the year ending Malazon.
I was originally I was scheduled to finish it like December of this year, but with my revised schedule, I was going to be finishing it next month. But I have very famously taken a break, which everybody thinks means I quit. I mean, how long did it take you to read the whole series?
Oh, it took me a while because I started in 2019. I think I started Gardens of the Moon then. And then I waited a while before picking up the second book because I wanted to follow a read along that was supposed to happen. It didn't end up happening. And then after Dead House Gates, I wasn't sure. I liked Dead House Gates at the very end, but I didn't connect with it as deeply as Gardens of the Moon. I know it's the opposite for almost everybody. And then, so I took a long space. And during that time was when I started finding more content and more explanations of what the series was about. And once I picked it up again with Memories of Ice, I felt like I had a better grasp of it. And at that point, I'd watched some of Philip's videos at that point too. So then I was blown away with Memories of Ice. And then I started my channel right after that. I kind of wonder if that slowed me down as far as videos and content, because that took up a lot of my space. That took up a lot of my TBR. At the end of last year, all I read was Malazon. I read very little else. If you looked at like what I read in November and December, I read Dust of Dreams. It took the whole month to read Dust of Dreams. I read I listened to a couple of other audiobooks in between. And I read nothing but The Crippled God in December. So it's an investment. It's a huge investment.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, why would I quit this close to the end, guys? Why would I read 7 tomes and then quit? I was just like, I feel like if I kind of force it, I felt like I was going to end up having a negative reaction or just wanted to kind of just like plow through it. And I was like, I've taken my time really to get to this point. Why would I do that? You know, plus
Yeah,
Reaper's Guild brought me down a little bit, I think. So
yeah.
Let's be honest.
Well, I think that's something I really appreciate about you too, Mike, is that you seem to me like a very conscientious reader and that you're in it for the journey just as much as the destination. And I think if you're a reader who tries to get to the destination and tries to feel your reward about finishing a book, and not to say finishing books isn't rewarding, because it is, and especially the ends of Malazon books are amazing in my opinion. But at the same time, I feel like that series more than any other, you really do kind of have to be in it for the journey. And so I think that that's the right way to go. I think you made the right decision with that.
I think so too. I mean, I know that it feels great. It feels great when you finish a series. Sure, I understand this. It feels awesome when you finish a series, but I'm also at the point where I'm like, I'm not going to do it just to, get through it. That feels like a chore, So I try not to do that. I mean, I took like over a year to read Wheel of Time. And when I first started, I remember I read the first 3 books in like a month, so
Wow.
I took like a 6-month break in that. So yeah, I think breaks are fine. It doesn't mean that you're quitting the series. To me, there are some that I'll take a break and I'll be like, it's been 2 years, like Witcher. I don't know if I'm going back to it. I'm not ready to say never, but I don't know if I'm going back to it. So.
I did read the entire Witcher series before starting Booktube. That was one of the last series I feel like I read and consecutively without any breaks. And it was okay. It was okay.
Do you think it was worth it? Because I've heard so many mixed things about Lady of the Lake.
I didn't like Lady of the Lake that very much.
People who love The Witcher say they do not like Lady of the Lake.
But I think part of that, and it's so hard because I feel like I have such a hard time separating my experience from my expectations.
Yeah.
I think I just wasn't expecting what I got. And so maybe if I knew it was going to be as weird as it was or as meta as it was, I don't know, it was a very strange book. Then maybe I would have had a better experience with it. I'm not sure. Maybe I think I was kind of expecting Witcher to be something more traditional than it was. And it was good though. I mean, some things about Witcher I really liked. I really loved the characters in the Witcher series. I love them. I still think about them all the time. And I love the sort of twist on, and you could even get this from the 2 short story collections as well as the show. I really like the twist on a fantasy family, and not necessarily found family in the sense of like a group of friends becoming family, but like an actual family, functional family that's sort of dysfunctional at the same time. I thought that was very cool.
Dandelion must be protected at all costs. So.
Oh, I love
One thing I can say that I feel like the show has done really, really well is Dandelion, right? Even if they don't call him Dandelion, I'm always going to call him Dandelion. But
yeah, me too.
My favorite. I love him to death.
I love him. No, I see the characters are fantastic. I love the characters in that series, and so they will always stay with me.
Just like this, guys. I want to go back to it. See, just like that.
Yeah.
That's how.
I'll never regret reading it because of that. But at the same time, when I think about, I think this direction of the story, the plot, it didn't really do much for me. I don't really remember much from it now at all. And like I said, it could have been expectation. It could have been other things, but overall, the characters stay with me. So.
Well, I am character first. So, I mean, I like it to have a decent story. It doesn't have to be like amazing as long as the character study is really, really well. Here's one from your buddy, Andrew. Who is your favorite person to buddy read Guns of the Dawn with, and why is it me?
It was Andrew. I had a fun time reading Guns of the Dawn with Andrew.
What is that? I've never heard of it. What author is this?
By Adrian Tchaikovsky. It's the
Oh,
only,
okay. I haven't read any of them yet.
Tchaikovsky book I've ever read. And actually, Alan gifted it to me. Alan and Christina gifted it to me for my birthday last year. And so Andrew and I read it together, and it was a lot of fun. And I've never read Flintlock Fantasy before, but that one was a really good standalone. And that one actually had a really strong plot, in my opinion. And it was a really good mixture of like, the Flintlock Fantasy kind of feels like historical fiction meets fantasy meets, and it does have guns. Usually I'm a little mixed about guns in fantasy, but it worked really well. And it was very satisfying.
I think I remember Alan hyping that book up on Instagram one time. And that was when I realized that he had written more than just science fiction. I thought he had only wrote, like Children of Time and that stuff. And I have those two. I have the Children of Time book, whatever the sequel is called. But I haven't actually got to that author yet. But yeah, I know Alan's a pretty big fan.
Yeah.
Here's another one for you. What genre do you wish you could read more of if you had unlimited time? That's from my buddy Theo.
What genre do I wish I could read more of? Fantasy is my favorite genre. So I'm assuming he's meaning outside of fantasy. And by the way, Rekindled Reader just recently found this channel, fantastic channel.
And he's got an amazing beard. Doesn't he? His beard is it's like Riker from Star Trek. Good. It's brilliant. It makes me so jealous. I got this like scruffy stuff, and he's like got this jealous.
Yeah. But I do like to read other genres. I know you do too, Mike. So it's kind of tricky. I think maybe I do like, I'm actually liking literary fiction a little bit more lately, but weird literary fiction, or maybe kind of more, I think of magical realism as fantasy, but I just like weird stories. So any kind of weird story. Is it Clive Barker? Is that the author? The one who did a Magicka?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an author I want to get to.
I have only read Weave World, and it was very weird.
I heard that one is really good. Did you like it?
Pretty good. There's some things that I was kind of iffy about. I think because I wanted a horror book, and that was the one that people recommended to me, and it was a fantasy book. So I was like, oh, that's cool. It's just, I was kind of wanting something scary because, you always kind of got the comparison of Stephen King and Clive Barker's like horror, So when I went to a Clive Barker book, I guess I just expected it to be horror, and I wasn't ready for that. So, but as a fantasy book, yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. What about you?
I just read Bernard Cornwell for the first time. And this is, I guess you'd say, really my first, I don't know, I've read something else, but my first historical fiction, I guess for the most part. Someone brought up something else, and I was like, oh, yeah, you're right, that counts. But okay, this genre right here I would like to get more into, I think, because if it's all as good as what Mr. Cornwell did, that's excellent. So, yeah, I want to read more of him. I finished this whole trilogy in like 2 weeks. It's really, really awesome. And yeah, I think I'd like to read more of that. And he's all about that like 9th century Scandinavia stuff that I just can't get enough of. So I would definitely like to read his Saxon stories, which is what the Last Kingdom on Netflix is based off of. So yeah, I think probably some of that, because right now I'm just like, I ain't never gonna be able to read all this, So
actually, that series, that trilogy is on my TBR this year. I am so eager to get to it. So eager, especially the King Arthur stuff. I'd love to get into that.
Yeah, and me being real big into the traditional, Thomas Mallory version of King Arthur's legend. It was almost kind of a challenge, I think, in a way, to be like, okay, forget what you know or think you know, and realize he's kind of doing something his own direction. So it has some things that if you can let go of those and just treat it as like a historical retelling, I think you'll have a good time with it.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of experience with that. I did read Mort Arthur when I was in high school, but I just don't remember very much. I remember enjoying it, but it was so long ago now that I don't remember much about it. But I would love to get into that. I was a huge fan. I know this is probably not related very much, but big fan of Sword in the Stone as a kid.
Sure, movie. Yeah,
I love that movie so much. And I heard that there's like a very weird, evil Merlin in this particular trilogy. Have you come across that yet?
He's something. That's all I'll say. There are some things that are changed around, but I really, really like what he did with Merlin in this a lot, actually. Merlin's really, really well done. Where he kind of like leaves it up to you to decide if magic is actually being used or not. I think that's a really neat way to do it, because he's kind of doing it like, yeah, you've heard the legend, but here's what really happened. That's kind of the approach that he takes with it. And the person he's telling this story to basically is like, okay, well, this is what I told that person, but the tale that we know traditionally today is what that person actually like wanted to keep and stuff like that, like how you feel about Lancelot and how you feel about Merlin and Arthur and all that stuff. It's really neat twist on it that I don't think anyone should be upset about it if it's because it is a little different. But yeah, he's great.
That's cool. I cannot wait to get to that. I just need to get some space into my
something
TV.
that I probably won't read, but I feel like I think you were the first to do it. Now it seems like everybody is reading this Legends and Lattes book.
Oh.
How did this come about? I mean, I think it's awesome that there's like, I think this guy's like an editor who's now got like a hit book. So that's awesome. I think that's great. I always want people to, I always encourage them to chase their dreams. But how did this come about? How did this gain so much popularity so fast?
So the funny story about that is that I first heard about it, I think, on Twitter. I think Patrick Leo was the one who was shouting that book out on Twitter.
That makes sense.
And then when I saw that and I knew that Andrew's birthday was coming up, I saw it on his wish list. And so I jumped on it. I thought, okay, Patrick likes it. Something about this tells me that Andrew's going to like it. And I kept thinking, I'm probably going to love it too. But I gifted it to Andrew. He read it in a day because it's Andrew. And well, it's a short book too. And he loved it. And he told me right away, he's like, I love this. And I right away thought, I just need this book. I just know it. And I watched a wonderful interview with Travis Baldree over on Patrick's channel. Travis Baldree also happens to be the audiobook narrator for the Cradle series by Will White. And so I was just curious. So I ended up picking it up, especially because, yes, you're reading that right now. Yeah. And especially because I grew up going to coffee shops all the time. That was what we did in the 90s, at least my group of friends. We did a lot of coffee shop stuff. I hung out with a lot of fantasy people. So for me, I actually have an association with fantasy and coffee shops in my head. And so the idea of this fantasy world and these fantasy creatures building a coffee shop, it sounds so ridiculous, but for some reason, I just thought I have to read this book. And I loved it. And it's not anything I would ever expect to like, except for those two things, because the whole description of it being low stakes, who reads a low stakes standalone fantasy book? Like no one ever. Everybody gets into fantasy because they want the big investment of time and, going on this long journey and this expansive world building. And this was like the total opposite direction. And for me, it worked. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
It almost sounds like something that would be in like a Dresden Files book. It's just like that ridiculous, but people really seem to love it. This gentleman here wants to know about Berserk. Have you ever read any manga? Are you reading Berserk? Have you read that?
I need to. So I started Vinland Saga. I saw that was on your TBR at one point.
It is. I have like the first 7 volumes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I got 3 volumes and I need to check out the 4th one through my library. Love that manga. Absolutely love it. I hope you like it. I haven't read Berserk. I haven't read much manga in general. I read Uzumaki last year and I really liked that. That was a really cool I have a friend who did a wonderful analysis on that particular manga and how it's like a Dante's Inferno type of story, which is really cool. But yeah, I haven't read much manga and I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about Berserk, except for you, right? You had some.
No, I like Berserk. I like it a lot. It's just I think that the Golden Age arc particularly was just like amazing. Some of the best fantasy I've ever read. I have a hard time just people want me to just read manga and review manga, and I'm like that's not the channel that I am. I've never said I was going to be that channel. In fact, I was actually just why not? I'm going to do this. So it was just something that I was doing once in a while. So, but no, I do like it. As far as your question, Sebastian, I think it's great if you're worried about that you can't get past a certain point. It's split up into arcs, so you can kind of stop wherever you want to stop, take breaks and things like that. I think I just finished the 4th arc in that series, so you don't have to commit to all 41 in a row. I think that you'd probably be okay there.
Wow, that's a lot.
People are having a hard time finding your channel. Yes, guys, it's just under Johanna.
I know. I'm sorry. It's because I don't have a creative name. I don't go by Johanna the Reader or Johanna. I don't know. It's just
why not your Instagram tag? You got a pretty good Instagram tag.
I started that so long ago, so it's what resonates and and I came up with that mostly kind of as a joke because I teach voice, and so with voice it's like a resonator and sound, and I like the whole. I don't know. It was kind of a play on words idea. And then on Twitter, I'm Johanna Reads. So I'm kind of all over the place with my name.
I mean, let's be honest here. I don't have a particularly great name, but I feel like it's too, I've got a brand. I can't change it now. It's kind of like what Dave Grohl said about Foo Fighters. If I could do this all over again, I wouldn't change nothing except that name because it's terrible. So
did he say that? I don't remember saying that.
He said it joking, but he's allowed to say what he wants. He's funny. Yeah. Hey, here's a sales job for you for Magicka, apparently.
Oh. Yeah. I've heard the same thing about Tigana, and I still want to read that.
You know what? I get so much. I'll do these every year, some standalones that I want to read, and every time, where's the guy Gabriel K? I don't know, man. I don't know. I hear some people say it's absolutely amazing. Some people say it's terrible. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard various things about it too. So I'm still wanting to read Tigana, though. I've heard that's the best, though. And I think Jake, when he was on your channel, was selling it pretty hard too, along with Dresden Files.
Well, I mean, he's the reason I'm reading Greenbone Saga this summer. So
Oh, I hope you like that.
Have you checked it out?
I read the first book, Jade City. This is my most unpopular opinion ever.
Oh, you didn't like it? Okay.
I didn't. I felt nobody is more upset about not liking that book than I am, because I know everybody thinks it's the best thing ever. It's just that I think I do want to try Dresden Files at some point, especially after hearing you and Jake talk about it. But in general, I do struggle. I'll think of exceptions, but in general, I do tend to struggle a little bit with urban fantasy. And the other thing is, I think I had a different expectation when I was told it was like The Godfather, because The Godfather 1 and 2 are some of my favorite movies of all time.
This is why you're awesome. These are the correct answers. Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like the characters, at least in the first book, quite gripped me to the level of Godfather. I just had a higher expectation. I do think she's a talented writer, though. I did think the end of the book was the best part for me. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. I think if you like a character in that book named Hilo, then chances are you're probably going to like the book. But
I think Dresden Files is the only urban fantasy I've read. And obviously that sets the bar pretty high because that's one of my favorite series. But I love like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I guess that counts sort of as urban fantasy. I don't even know. It's just such a weird subgenre that people are real picky about what they let into that club kind of thing. Like I'll say, oh, this urban fantasy, or that's not urban fantasy, or kind of like what people do with Harry Potter. You're not allowed to put that like in any category because everybody will say it's not fantasy, it's not young adult, it's not urban fantasy. It's like, well, what is it? Like it's just Harry Potter. Okay, so that's kind of how I feel about urban fantasy. You're not really allowed to categorize anything.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because this morning I just kind of got into this idea of like, I need to know what magical realism means. And I kept finding all these videos comparing the difference between urban fantasy and magical realism. And the lines are so blurry. And they're even blurry between like magical realism and fantasy. So anytime people try to define these genres, it's really like...
It's rough for me. I'm usually like, look, it's fantasy, it's horror, it's sci-fi. I try to get into it. There's just so much stuff. Like when I started reading Cradle, I'm like, what the hell is progression fantasy? I've never heard of this. What is this?
I've never heard of that. Yeah. Well, and I like bendy stuff anyway. Like the Dark Tower, that stuff is awesome. And that has
now you're speaking my language here. I mean, Dark Tower is just, I think I just redid my list and that was number 4 favorite fantasy series of all time. So
yeah,
you're reading that for the first time, right?
I'm reading it for the first time, and that's another one that I'm taking a long time on, and I need to speed it up. I'm trying to get through. I'm not going to, force myself. I want to enjoy the journey, but I do want to make more progress on that series.
Are you following Philip's schedule?
I don't know. I know I'm going to try to get to Wind Through the Keyhole this month, and then maybe The Wolves of the Kala this summer sometime.
Yeah, we're doing Wind Through the Keyhole at the end of our read along. I've actually never read that one. I've never read that one.
Okay.
I have not read that one because, I had a big breakup period with Stephen King over Dark Tower because I was upset about some things, which I will definitely talk about, here going forward. But it's an amazing series, and I'll be anxious to hear what people who didn't have to wait, 6 years between books think about.
So my brother, I need to go back and ask him when he read it, because my brother is the one who's been trying to get me to read The Dark Tower for ages, for ages. He read it over 10 years ago. Hello. Yeah. And so he was the one just going on and on for years about me picking it up. You're going to love it. And it took me so long to pick up the first book. But I have to say, I just finished Wizard and Glass this year. That has been my favorite so far. I loved it so.
Yeah, see,
it's actually one of my top reads.
love that one, or they can't stand it because it strays from the main quest kind of thing. Like me, I wanted all that all that flashback of Roland stuff. So I was
100%. I think it did help me going into it, knowing that it would be that. I watched a couple.
Plus, it was the one that most felt like a Western fantasy to me, like gunslinger fantasy, and I love that. That's just so.
Have you seen Westworld, that show on HBO? I've only seen the first season, but I just kept kind of seeing some more images in my head when I was reading the book. But I loved it. That spoke to me on so many different levels, especially like without giving away spoilers. There's obviously a Romeo and Juliet quote at the beginning of the book and a sort of Romeo and Juliet theme. And I love the way he handled it. I loved it.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I think it's a beautiful story. So yeah, I agree with you. Have you read Sun Eater by Mr. Sun Eater here?
I want to. That's such a high priority series that I really want to get to. I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about it.
Yeah, it sucks that Mr. Rocky is just like a swell human being too. So make sure I got to do the gospel and make sure that everybody tries this out. Thanks, Yoda says that we're the two better. Can't think of two better people to listen to while talking about nothing. Love you both.
Well, thank you.
That is very, very sweet of you. Thank you so much. All right.
I have a question for you, Mike. Are you somebody who visualizes while you read? Like, do you visualize what you're reading about? Yeah,
but not always. Like, I'll see everybody like, oh, I cast this actor in my head. A lot of the times, it's just gonna sound really weird. You know how like you'll be like, okay, I'm going to look up like this artwork of this character. In my head, I'll kind of like paint my own artwork of a character. And a lot of the times, this is what confuses people. It's nothing like what the author describes them as. Like I think of a character Marcone from Dresden Files. In my head, is nothing quite like what you actually get described in the book. So it's just something that weird that I do. As far as like visualizing, cool, there's stuff blowing up. Yeah, I mean, I'm just picturing stuff blowing up, or really awesome sword fights and stuff. Sure, but yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think I do the same thing. I kind of make up my own things. I once did a fan art piece, and then I got really upset because somebody said they are supposed to have something eyes, that the eyes are all wrong, and
I get that a lot. So I kind of stay away from like fan cast videos because there's just like all it is going to be is just people telling me that I'm not doing it like the book described it at all. And I'm like, yeah, I've been guilty of that quite a few times.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting though because I've been noticing lately while reading that I think I am a very visual reader because I feel like when I'm immersed in a story, like I can almost feel myself in the landscape or see things. Wizard and Glass, no exception. I just felt like I could see everything in Magus and everything come to life, especially the way he would describe certain things. And yet I've heard recently some booktubers say that they're not visual readers, that they don't really visualize things while they read. And I thought that was interesting. So that's why I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I mean, I guess everybody kind of has their own. I've heard people say like that they don't like action scenes because they just like get bored during action scenes. Like, okay, so I mean, yeah, I guess everybody does it a little differently. Thank you, Kaiju. You continue to be the best, and I see your kitty there, cute little cat.
Yeah, I think it depends for me with action scenes. I think some authors are really excel at it, and then sometimes it could be that can be a little bit tricky to visualize.
Sure. Yeah. I think about like John Gwynn, who can like just describe every move of a sword fight to me. And I'm just like all into it. And I think someone like Pierce Brown, who I love, is just like chaos, which is what battle would be like. Just chaos. You don't know what's going on. Did that person I just ran into and stabbed, was that one of my people or not? So I think it's a little different with every author there. Or like I think about like Sebastian de Castell, who actually did do fencing. So he writes the sword fights like literally step by step, and it's just so good. So yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, and I know you just recently reviewed the Dark Elf trilogy, but I've heard the same thing about his action scenes. That they are so well choreographed, so well realized.
They're better than I was expecting, because everybody tells me, this is all, just kind of entry level fantasy. So I was expecting like he pulled his sword out and he won the fight. I wasn't expecting to have like this great description of this fight and stuff. So yeah. He's really, really good.
That's cool.
In my mind's eye, Robert Downey Jr. plays every character.
Interesting.
That's interesting. I've had something like that. I was guilty for a while, so I say I try to stop casting actors in my head because everyone for a while there was James McAvoy. I think it's because after I saw that movie Split, where he has like 30 different personalities, I'm like, he could literally play any role, like any role. So I kind of fell into that trap myself.
Yeah. It used to be that sometimes I'd watch a Booktube video and then I'd read a book and I'd cast the Booktuber in the role of the book. And I thought, you need to stop doing that. I haven't done that in years, but for some reason I did that when I started watching Booktube. It was really weird.
Marcone in my head is Titus Welliver. That's the guy who plays Bosch on Amazon, that Amazon show. Bosch, I think he's awesome. The thing was, when I talked to Jim Butcher, even he said, yeah, that'd be really good. So it's nothing like getting his stamp of approval, right?
Wow, that's cool.
Have you read any Dresden Files yet?
I haven't yet, but I'm really curious, especially after hearing you and Jake talk about it on your Talk About Nothing with him.
Yeah, it's not going to be serious for everybody. It's just some people like, how are you taking this seriously? I don't know. It's just one of those series. I think that like it doesn't take itself too seriously, but when the stakes matter, they hit hard. But it has got some goofy stuff in it. I mean, it's got like a frozen chicken falling out of the sky and hitting someone and knocking them out. And you're like, what in the hell just happened? It's like one move short of like, Looney Tunes or something, but it works. It's amazing the way it works. It really is.
Well, everyone seems to be loving it the more that they read on in that series. So I may give it a try at some point. Like I said, I always have had some struggles with urban fantasy, but I feel like the best authors can prove me wrong about anything. That's what I've noticed.
Okay, well, you mentioned the best author, so let's talk about the best author ever right now. Let's talk about JRR Tolkien, okay?
Yes.
So it is really stunning to me how unpopular Lord of the Rings stuff is on Booktube.
It's crazy. It makes me so sad.
It's like I will talk about anything else and it gets more attention than Tolkien stuff does. And I don't know if it's just like a generation gap or what's going on. Like this is like the first generation growing up with, at least without the movies. It's like my generation had the books that were passed on from our parents, or we had the Bashki cartoons or something like that. But this is like the first generation that didn't even have the movies to go off of. It just seems like there's like no interest on Booktube about Tolkien. It just completely surprises me.
Yeah, it's wild. It is so weird. I can't really say why. I think, I know I read The Hobbit when that was the first fantasy book I had ever read, was The Hobbit. And I was just blown away. I was blown away because I felt like it almost felt like the book understood me on some weird level. I don't know how to explain it. And then when I read the Lord of the Rings, I didn't finish it because I'm the worst. But I do remember just being in awe over Tolkien's prose, even though I've never been good at analyzing prose.
Me neither.
Like that. I'm not really analytical about that, but I remember just thinking, this is so beautiful. Like I could just read this out loud and it sounds so beautiful. And also kind of frightening at times too. I remember feeling really emotionally gripped through the story. And so, it really spoke to that generation. But for some reason now it doesn't seem to be catching as much attention. And I have friends who try to read it now and they think, oh, it's so boring. I hear that.
And I think it's kind of like, I don't know, when our parents were trying to push like their music on us or something when we were younger, and we're like, but then you actually like listen, you're like, that's actually pretty good. I think it's like that. It's just, it's like taking your medicine, and some people just, I don't try to lump people into like a category like this. I'm just saying, if you basically got into fantasy with stuff that was written like, I don't know, 2013 or 14 and newer, it's going to be hard for you to go back to something like Tolkien because it is a different time. That's what I've said about Robert E. Howard or Lovecraft. It's hard for people to go back to that style of writing. It is really, really tough. But when people say it's aged out, I'm ready to flip tables.
I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting. And I hear more and more people, their entry point seems to be, and I know that Philip talked about this on his Dear Dr. Fantasy yesterday. It seems like a lot of people's entry point nowadays is Mistborn. Seems like a lot of people are saying that that's the trilogy that got them into fantasy, which I think is interesting. But yeah, for me, it was definitely Tolkien. And I also love A Song of Ice and Fire. And by the way, I just recently read a little bit of Conan, thanks to you and Michael K. Vaughan just influencing me to pick up some Conan. And I am actually really impressed. I think what you said in your review was spot on, which is that Robert E. Howard has a way of just he is an efficient writer. He had a way of like writing so much action and so much content within just a couple of pages.
Yeah, like 12-page story, and it's like, geez, yeah, it's like a 100-page story from someone else for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Michael K. Vaughan. I think that's a channel that's completely underrated. I actually found him when I was going through reading some John Carter of Mars again, and I was like, "There's like no one else out there talking about these old books." And I found his channel. I just kind of like binged through it, and I can go ahead and tell you guys, he's my Talk About Nothing guest next month. By the way, Michael.
Yeah. I was gonna. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's so awesome. I think his stuff is great. He's got some countdowns of stuff. The guys, I think that you're into the countdown videos, you'll really like. So. Free plug for Mr. Vaughn there, please.
Yeah, both of you have been huge influences on me to pick up some Conan, because he's constantly talking about Robert E. Howard on his channel.
Yeah, Mike.
Constantly talking about Edgar Rice Burroughs, a lot of influential fantasy writers, and I just love his style. He has like the best kind of dad jokes and that kind of humor on his channel. He's wonderful.
Yeah, we might dad joke you out next month, guys. Patrick wants to know if either of us have heard of an author called Scott Smith, and so what are your thoughts on his work, author of The Ruins and a Simple Plan? I have not, Patrick. I have not heard of this author.
Haven't heard of that author.
But I will definitely look them up. For sure. Thing is, like, people think that they throw recommendations out. They always say, "I know you're busy," or something like that. Like, guys, look, I'm busy, but I don't have a problem adding anything to my list. You go look at my Goodreads want to read tab. It's like ridiculous, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's no end to it. I mean, I remember, for me, Booktube has definitely influenced that, because before I discovered Booktube or the book community in general, I mean, I remember having a time when I didn't know what to pick up. I had no idea what to read. And now that's never a problem.
Yeah, no, that's never going to be a problem for me. And people ask me so much, how do you plan so far ahead? It's like, I got to, or else I'll start like 9 book ones, and that'll just be a whole new headache to deal with. So I have to. I've already, like today, I had pretty much set through the end of July and pretty much like set it in stone. So, yeah, I like to plan ahead. When you work in the field that I work in, you plan everything ahead of time. So, yeah, I have to, or else I'll just,
I'm trying to take influence from you and trying to commit to fewer series at a time, or trying to get through certain things.
Something I wanted to change this year, instead of doing that, is like I started doing like reading like trilogies at a time, like in a month. That's kind of something I've been kind of focused on. I did Nevernight, did Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. That was part of a read along. I just did the Bernard Cornwell. Next month, I'm doing Shattered Sea by Joe Abercrombie. I think that makes it a lot. I don't want to say like makes it feel like that you have unfinished homework, but I don't know. I just think it's really nice reading those back to back to back, and just just knocking them out and getting them before you really your brain dries up on what you've read already. I think, because I think about some of these books that I spent so long doing, and I put like breaks between them, and I think that actually hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, that's exactly the case for me with certain series. I feel like I do myself a disservice by spacing out books too much. With The Dark Tower, it's been a little bit easier, made by the fact that he summarizes at the beginning of each book. But yeah, I really need to do better on that series. I also really need to get to Children of Dune. I want to complete at least the first 4 books in the Dune series.
So you've read Messiah?
I read that at the end of last year. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell people, as just like the sequel to Dune, Messiah's average at best, but if you read Messiah and Children together, that's the actual sequel, and that's what you kind of want to read. So yeah, I hope you will. I hope you'll enjoy that.
I really loved Dune Messiah. I thought it was fantastic.
I think people just aren't prepared for where he goes with Paul in that book.
Yeah.
They weren't really expecting that after book 1, so I think that really surprised some people. So I think that's why I always kind of tell people, if you go into it not expecting this to be a story about Paul, I think that you'll enjoy it quite a bit more. But yeah, I can see why people struggle with that.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on e-readers? Do you prefer them or physical books?
So actually, okay, well, I'm going to the eye doctor tomorrow. And I've actually been back and forth between reading physically and reading on my iPad. And I don't own an e-reader right now. Actually, I do. I own a very generic old Kindle, and I need to upgrade that, because the print, I can make the print bigger on an e-reader. And the print on here is so tiny, and I've been noticing my eyes just struggling lately. So it's definitely a relief sometimes to read for an e-reader. How about you?
Yeah, the whole reason I made the switch from my iPad to Kindle was because of eye strain. I was getting so bad of eye strain with with my iPad, and it really, really helped. And then I hit my 40s, and the eyesight just started degrading anyway. That's just what happens when you hit your 40s, apparently.
Oh no.
So I had LASIK in like 2003, and finally kind of wore off. So I actually have an appointment next week to go back and see, is there anything really at this point that I can do, or is it just this from now on? Is it just going to be glasses from now on? So that's kind of what I want to know. Right. It started with all I needed, the reading glasses. And then it started, all I need them is when I watch TV. Then it turned into, I need them while I drive too. Now it's pretty much, I need them for everything except like looking at a device. It's, a foot away from me. So
Yeah. It's gotten so bad for me lately. I'm the worst too. Yeah, I really do read a lot on my iPad. So I probably need to get an e-reader. Does it really make a big difference for your eyesight? So have you noticed a big?
It did. I don't think that this is a part of that. I just think that, as a people now, we spend so much time staring at this all day, and it's gonna jack your eyes up. They told us it's gonna jack our eyes up, and we still do it, So at this point, I feel like they're correct.
Yeah. So I'm sure you saw the videos and the pictures and stuff that I got to meet Philip and
I did.
Erickson,
I
Alan,
was low-key jealous.
It was wonderful. That was the most amazing experience of the year for me. And what happened was my husband and I went to Orlando together. We spent the day before we met all of them. Well, actually, we got in Thursday. We had dinner with Alan and his wife. And then the next day, my husband and I went to theme parks because my husband likes reading fantasy, but he doesn't really like talking about fantasy or hearing me talk about it. It's like a whole other hobby. And so to make the trip fun for him, we went to Hollywood Studios, we went to Epcot, and the lines were so long. They were so long everywhere we went. It was spring break there in Florida at the time. Mm-hmm. And so to pass the time, I had downloaded The God Is Not Willing by Stephen Erickson on my Kindle app, and I was reading on my phone while we were waiting in lines. And it was so fun. Like, actually, I was able to kind of zoom in. I don't know how I did it, but I was able to tune out the noise and just zoom into what I was reading because I thought it was really good. But man, by the end of the day, I wasn't wearing my glasses. I was just wearing my sunglasses. By the end of the day, my eyes were just on fire. They were hurting so badly. So that's why in all the pictures, I'm like wearing my glasses because I was like, there's no way I can do.
So that kind of sounds like a story that Madison, one of my moderators on Discord, actually told me about, was that she had gotten her husband to agree to read the first law when she was very excited about it. But the thing was, like, he liked it, but every time she tried to talk to him about it, be like, "What do you think about this part? This part?" He was like, "Yeah, it's great." So he's just like same way. He doesn't like to talk about what he's reading, and that's kind of what led her, to reaching this outlet to be able to talk about that. So I think that's right. A lot of, I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of booktubers did this just to find other people to talk to about these books, because let's be honest, fantasy may seem like it's super popular because we're talking in our circles all the time. It's really not. A lot of people think that it's everything. Like, I had this big thing about saying that we'll never see anything like we saw with Harry Potter again, with people standing in line at midnight at every Walmart in the country, waiting for that last book to come out. We'll never see that again. They're like, oh, I think when Doors of Stone or Wind of Winters come out, it really won't, guys. It'll never have that mass appeal like you think. Dan Brown outsells Brandon Sanderson. True.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't have the foothold that you guys think it is. You just sit around this community and you think it's that big. It really is not that big in mainstream audiences. It's very much like the horror genre in movies. It has its very loyal fan base, but it's never going to be like mass appeal, so
I think Game of Thrones did pretty good. Not quite on the level.
Think about it. Were that many people reading the books though? Or was it just the show?
Oh, I don't think. I know a lot of people who did not read the books. They
were like, I tell them all the time. They'd be like, oh, I just can't get enough. I can't wait for the next season. I'm like, well, then read the books. Like, I don't want to read those.
I don't know how they could even understand what was happening in the show if they hadn't read the books. Because I know I watched that with my husband and he didn't understand half of it. I'm like trying to explain to him, well, this happened and then this happened. I was trying to explain to him the books.
I remember because huge fan of the series. And I remember my wife and I got invited to, because I was writing for a media site at the time. And I got invited by HBO to go see a screening of the first 2 episodes, like almost a year before the show came out. And we're both super fans. We were just so excited. We're there thinking it's going to be nothing but other super fans. No one else there had ever even heard of it. It was just something they got invited to for whatever reason, you know. So
Wow.
that was like my realization that like, yeah, I don't even think that anybody really cares about fantasy. But the thing about that is I was like, have you met our Lord and Savior, Game of Thrones, trying to get people to watch that. It's crazy that it got as popular as it did, because I remember like begging everyone I know to watch that first season so the show wouldn't get canceled. And everyone's like, oh, I just don't like fantasy. I just don't like fantasy. And these are the same people like 3 years later, like, hey, Mike, have you read these books? I think you'd like.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
so good times, right? Yeah.
That's cool that you were a longtime fan before the show came out.
I can't say that with everything, but that's one of them that I can definitely say that about. But yeah, it's one of those, hey, I liked Metallica before they were mainstream, it's kind of like that.
Oh, wow.
Kind of fun.
That's pretty cool. Like before the Black Album?
Oh, like for real Metallica? Yeah. I mean, they were popular-ish. I mean, they had a couple albums out. It's not like I was listening to them when they were like a local band or nothing like that. But I mean, before the Black Album, sure. Yeah. I grew up in the headbang. I grew up when MTV still showed music.
Me too.
Yeah,
Gen X.
Lying, guys. She's lying about her age. Have you heard of this Dandelion Dynasty series?
I want to read.
People have talked about this so much lately.
I saw Tall Guy Reads on the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still around, but he's been reviewing that series. I really, really want to get to it. That's also been, that was going to be a priority series for this year.
I saw the last book was coming out, and they were doing a read along on my Discord, and I flirted with doing it, and I looked at each of those books were like monstrous. Like, no, I can't fit those in right now. So yeah, I didn't do it. But yeah,
I need to start joining some read-alongs. I haven't done that in a long time. And with like Assassin's Apprentice, I have a bunch of friends who were reading that at the beginning of this year, and I didn't join that because I had just finished Malazon, and I just didn't feel ready to go into Robin Hobb right after finishing Malazon. And then I'd also joined, actually, I did join a read-along for the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. And so I picked up Assassin's Apprentice, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't put it on any TBR. I told Derry, who's in the comment section. I confided in her because she did a wonderful Realm of the Elderlings video, and maybe 2 other people. But yeah, I kind of miss read-alongs a little bit because it's kind of fun to interact with people.
You just got to be careful, because once you do one, you end up getting roped into like 9 of them, So I made that promise myself. I was only going to be in one at a time, and I was not going to like tie myself down on these things. So yeah, that's why I quit I didn't quit the Malazon read along. I was just like, you guys want to keep going. We have like 1% of the audience we had when we started this, so I didn't feel bad. There was literally like 3 people on my Discord still doing it. So that was a first timer. That was a first timer.
When you started it, I was thinking this has to have broken some kind of world record.
It was huge when it first started. Yeah, like the Discord was so crazy those first few days that like people were leaving the server just because it was so busy. So, yeah, a lot of people were excited to do it, but I'd say a lot dropped out for book 2, and the rest dropped out after like book 4. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, people are with me. They don't believe that you're the age that you're saying you are. They think you're a liar. So yeah.
I am Gen X, and I'm married to a millennial because he's 2 years younger than me.
But you cradle robber.
I'm a cradle robber. Yeah. Never thought that would be me too. I've always been the older guys, but yeah.
Do you want to hype your Malazon content here for Sharks Boy?
Oh, I do have a spoiler-free video where I talk about my breakdown of each book, and I don't quite rank them, but I talk about my general experience through each one. I didn't do, unfortunately, I started my channel after Memories of Ice, so I don't have separate reviews for Gardens of the Moon, Dead House Gates, or Memories of Ice. I had no idea I was going to have a channel at that time, so I didn't really like take the notes, and I think what would be necessary to do a good review of those books. So I'll have to do that when I reread them someday.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But I do have reviews though for House of Chains on. So if you want to see any of those, they're there.
Yeah, and I have them 3 Reapers Gale. I'll get back to Toll of the Hounds eventually. Evie says King Lu was amazing even after only reading a short story collection. Now that's Dandelion Dynasty, right? Yeah, I believe he translated the Remembrance of Earth Past. That's 3 Body Problem. I believe he's a translator for that.
Oh,
At least that's
yeah.
what it says on my spine of my book, I believe. So
Have you
I
read that
didn't even draw that
series?
connection.
The Three
No,
Body
no,
series?
I planned to do it last year, and then when we sped up the Malazon schedule, it was one of the things that kind of got cut off. But right now, my goal is to read it before the Netflix series comes out, because I like to read before the adaptation. I feel like it's I don't know. You see the adaptation first, I feel like it kind of affects how you read it. But also, if guys, if you read it first, you're also watching the show the whole time. You're like, they screwed this up.
I have such conflicting feelings about adaptations. So I don't watch a lot of them, to be honest with you, because whenever I always prefer, like most people, to read the book before watching an adaptation.
Same.
But the problem I have with adaptations is they mess with my memory of the book, like almost always. I didn't notice that happen until Harry Potter, actually, because I read that series. I was already, being a Gen Xer, I read that series as an adult. I was in my 20s at the time. And when I finished the series, I watched the movies. I loved the movies. And then my sister one day was listening to the audiobook of the first book, and we were on a road trip. And hearing the audiobook, I just was like, what? I forgot about that. And I forgot about that. That's not.
This happened to me in Lord of the Rings. Like every once in a while, something like, wait, is that from the movie or is that in the book?
Yeah.
Is that line actually in the book? And I read the book 7 times, so I should know this.
Yeah. It messes with my memory big time.
But I mean, we watched the trilogy like as a family, twice a year.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's just.
It's such a wonderful trilogy. Yeah. I mean, because like the last time I read Lord of the Rings last year, and then I watched the first 2 movies with my husband. I still haven't watched Return of the King again. I need to watch that. I haven't watched that since it was like in theaters. But yeah, even then I noticed the differences while I was watching. I'm like, yep, that's different. That's different. That's different. But then some time will pass and I'll look back and think, oh, now I need to reread the book.
Yeah, I can see that. For sure. I hope First Law gets a good adaptation. I've only read the Blood itself, but I could tell it could be amazing. I am with you, Meridian, man. I think that would be amazing television if it was done right.
Is it going to be adapted, or
what's that?
Is it going to be adapted, or
when I talked to Joe Abercrombie, you could tell that like he had a gag order. Basically, I think what it is he says that a lot of people will snatch up rights basically just to keep their competitors from using them, and without him actually saying this, I believe someone like basically put like a 10-year block on his, so the rights won't come free again for a while. So I think he would have a lot of interest if it wasn't like already owned by somebody, because apparently they're owned by someone who has no interest in using them. They just didn't want, they didn't want HBO to snatch them up or something like that. I don't know, but you have read First Law, or you're about halfway through.
The next book I'm picking up after this is Red Country. I'm buddy reading that with Overly Average Ben. And I'm so excited for it. I know a lot of people are not excited about Westerns. I am really into the idea of reading Westerns right now. And I think Wizard and Glass Pop probably influenced that.
Yeah. I think that I had just weird expectations for that. But the standalones are so weird. The standalones, it seems like everyone they either love this one or they hate this one, or it's flipped. Everybody always likes the heroes, but everybody that like loves Best Served Cold and hates Red Country, or vice versa. Yeah. I love Best Served Cold. Red Country, like I said, it's still Joe Abercrombie. It's like cold pizza. It's still pizza. It's just not.
Yeah.
Fresh.
I have a lot of friends who were not crazy about Best Served Cold, and I liked it. I can understand some parts maybe, but that not being as great. Or
I love the Count of Monte Cristo, and to me that was him writing the Count of Monte Cristo. So yeah, I was all about it. I love a good.
He's such a brilliant writer. He is.
If people are like, "Oh, well, Monson just wasn't likable," I'm like, "Man, most of his protagonists aren't likable."
No, yeah,
you guys read his books? The one that we all love, Glockta, not a nice guy.
No. Yeah, I don't have to like characters to enjoy them. And his writing style is so good, because I mean, not only is he good at writing very distinct characters, but there's something about his prose style that is it's so distinctly him. He just has a very distinct style, and it just flows, and it's so brilliant. I don't know. And he has such a great way, in addition to having a beautiful prose style, or just a really interesting poetic prose. I don't even know how to describe his prose. It's just very distinct, like I said. But also,
when I talked to John Gwynn, he basically said that when you're reading Joe Abercrombie, you don't know it's him, but you know it's him as soon as he's describing the characters, because you know exactly how he describes or how his characters talk, basically, and that's what makes him like so unique. And Scott here with big facts. Every First Law book is incredible.
Oh yeah.
It's not wrong. So you're going to keep going.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
100%.
with the sequel
I
trilogy.
love Abercrombie's for it writing. Yeah, I think he's brilliant.
These are correct answers.
Brilliant.
I'm all about this. I love it. I love it. I mean, that's when I first started the channel, and I was like, okay, do people like me, or do they just like Wheel of Time? You know, so that's why I said I'm going to talk about this other series that I love, First Law, and like not nearly enough people read, and just to see basically, hey, can I do this on something, or is it just, you know, am I just writing Wheel of Time's coattails or whatever? So I think the fact that Joe told me himself that I've sold more books than his publisher has for him.
Wow.
Tells me that that's just great that I've gotten that many people to read.
Well, you have fantastic First Law content. I know I watched all of your reviews after I finished each book. I just went back.
It's all old. I want to update it. That's the thing is I took that poll recently about what some stuff I should cover. And I think people want me to re-review the original trilogy because those are just spoiler reviews. When I started the channel, I did just spoilers. That's all I did. Yeah, I think I might actually do like my standard review that I had this was before I had a format or anything, you know. So I think I'm actually doing my current format because there's a read along on the server starting in June. So I think I might actually kind of where they are, I might review that book and kind of just
wow, that's cool.
Redo it because I mean honestly, it's my favorite modern fantasy series. I have run out of content to talk about it, so why not just do it over?
Yeah,
do it again, you know. So
I think I chose A Song of Ice and Fire for that, but either one would be awesome.
The thing with Song of Ice and Fire is just like I'd have to reread a lot of those because I haven't read a lot of those books since right before A Dance with Dragons came back.
Oh, me neither. I haven't read them since.
So I mean I'm gonna redo. I'm redoing a World of Ice and Fire right now, but I'm gonna do Fire and Blood again before House of the Dragon comes out this fall. And I thought maybe if I do this, I'll do it on the channel in timeline order instead of publication order. Sorry, Scott. I know Scott's really just mad right now if I'm not going to read something publication order. It's a thing that kind of a joke that we go about. But anyhow, so I think I might just do like timeline order, you know, do Fire and Blood, then do like Night of the Seven Kingdoms before I get to the regular series. That way I can just read one once in a while or something. So that wouldn't be every month I'm doing a Song of Ice and Fire video, but it's, you know, one of my favorite fantasy series ever, regardless of the jokes that we make about it never being finished. Still one of my favorite.
Oh, it's one of my favorites too. Yeah. I'll never regret reading all 5 books, even if he never finishes it.
I mean, I don't have a wrong answer here. I think that they're both great series, but what do you think?
Debating on my next series read. I haven't read Faithful and the Fallen. Oh, okay. So I can't speak to that, and I haven't finished The Dark Tower yet.
I think Faithful and the Fallen is a little shorter, so you'll get through it a lot faster, I think. But if you're just there for an all-time journey, I mean, both of these made my top 10 fantasy series, but Dark Tower is a top 5 for me. So yeah, me being a big Stephen King advocate, I'm probably going to say Dark Tower, but I don't think that you can lose with your pick there.
Yeah, I was surprised watching your top 10. You had a top fantasy.
Yeah, top 10. My update to my old video. People ask me all the time to update that video. I was like, I don't feel like enough of it has changed. But when I got to the point, that's what I said last year. Okay, I've read some more series. I think there's been a couple of changes. Top half didn't move that much, you know. But I didn't want to just make the same video again. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, that video gets a lot of traffic. But again, I've never been the clickbait traffic type. It's like, do I want people to watch my stuff? Sure, it'd be great for growth and stuff like that, but I refuse to do the clickbait stuff. Or guys, I'd be doing a review of every single individual issue of Berserk if I just here for clicks, you know. So I know how manga really takes off on Booktube.
Same here. I feel like I would probably get a lot of views if I did a video like that. Maybe I will someday, but man, that stresses me out to even think about doing that.
Yes, it's just when people accuse me, oh, you're doing that for clicks. I'm like, man, I don't do anything for clicks because I know what would get the clicks, and I'm not going to do that. I mean, besides, I'm like one of the few booktubers who will actually say that, you know, Brandon Sanderson cannot walk on water, and that lost me a lot of subscribers. You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. See, publication order always.
Well, I know I commented on his, I think it was Wizard in Glass, one of his videos, and told him I was planning to read Wind Through the Keyhole. And he said, he told me how he was going straight to Wolves of the Kala and reading them in publication order. So I didn't realize that. I didn't realize you were such a... I
feel like it's, I don't know. I haven't read it, so I can't say. But from what I talked to my friend Jaime, who's like the authority on all things. He does horror shows, held to Stephen King. He said that like he feels like if you read it between books 4 and 5, it would kind of be a momentum killer. So he thinks it's best to kind of go back to it at the end. But again, I that's only what I've heard from him, so I can't really say for myself.
Yeah. Well, I understand it's a little more Roland backstory, and man, I just loved Roland so much after book 4.
Wow. Yes, Eric, I'm aware. I talked about this the other day that the last time I reread A Song of Ice and Fire was the lead up to Dance with Dragons coming out, or A Dance with Dragons. And I'm like, wow, you know what? My kids weren't even born yet. My oldest turns 10 tomorrow.
Oh,
so it's like, all right. So
yeah, same here. It's been that long since I read the series. And I did start right when I heard about the show coming out. I did have a couple of friends who were big, longtime fans of A Song of Ice and Fire. And they were so funny. I remember hanging out with them at a party, and they were saying, "Damn you, Martin," even back then. And
we were because it had been like 5 years between books 4 and 5. And like in hindsight,
and they were saying, "Oh yeah, because we love him, because we love his books. That's why we say, 'Damn you, Martin,' because he was already known for taking way too long between books back then."
So Brent noticed that you brought up magical realism. He thinks you should check out Boy's Life, which
I want to. I've heard about it. Yeah, you were talking about it the other day, right?
I think if you love when Stephen King does like coming of age life stuff, you'll enjoy it. I think that it's probably, that's high praise come from me. I feel like he's probably come the closest to being able to do that on like almost the same level. So yeah, it was really, really great. It's gonna be hard for me reading anything because a lot of people are like, "Oh, but read that first, you're just setting the bar super high." Well, we'll see. We'll see. If I read Swan Song and I like it just as much as I like Boy's Life, I'm probably gonna read anything by the guy. So I was really impressed.
I've heard really fantastic things. I think Sarah from Sarah Reads was praising that book as well.
Yeah, and she's a big King fan as well. So yeah, she was really excited when I was reading it. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Have you read anything by Brom? The author Brom, Brom?
Mm-mm.
Okay. He's an interesting guy. You should check him out. He does like illustrated.
Is this like classic literature? Or is this old?
No, it's modern fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah. He wrote a book called The Child Thief that I checked out last year. Trying to think of what it's like a really dark Peter Pan retelling, but a modern day edgy Peter Pan retelling. And it reminded me, and I haven't read a lot of King. I've read a little bit of The Dark Tower, obviously the first 4 books, and I've read 11/22/63, which I absolutely adore. And so I couldn't help but think of King when I read that book, because I just thought the way he did young male characters just reminded me of King for some reason. And plus the blend of fantasy and horror elements were so cool. It was actually one of the biggest surprises I read last year. And apparently he illustrates his own books, and he's an amazing artist. Absolutely incredible. Brom.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna look it up afterwards because that sounds good.
So I recommended it to my friend Jake, Bookish Drummer, because he's a huge King fan. And he actually really loved it. And actually the book he followed that with was Brom's book Krampus. And that one is like a Christmas horror book. And
is the movie based off of this? Because I watched a movie called Krampus.
Probably. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. But I do want to read Krampus around December this year. And I've heard that one's even better, actually. I've heard Krampus is even better than The Child Thief. But yeah, I don't know. I just have this idea in my head that King fans might like Brom, because he does have that sort of twisted fantasy meets horror kind of twist to him, and just the way he did, like I said, younger characters. I thought he did it in a good, gritty way.
Do you read a lot of horror at all?
I don't. No.
Because I want to say I remember you reviewing The Only Good Indians.
Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed it.
You liked it?
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like everyone I talk to hates it. And I'm like, all right, well, I had actually planned to do that this October, except of all it's like, all right, like I got a lot of horror books I want to read, and I try to shove them all in October. So I was like, I had to make some cuts, and that was one of the ones that got cut. But
I did. I really liked it. But I can understand people not liking it too, because it's not like it's not what I would think of, and I'm not very well read in horror, but I wouldn't think of it. It's definitely got some slasher elements to it, but it's not like a typical horror book either. It's kind of more, I don't know. It's kind of more literary meets horror, if that makes sense. And I liked it. I like what he did with it, and I have to admit that there's part of me that loves anything that ties in indigenous cultures, like American Indian cultures, into the story. And I know he's big on that because he himself is American Indian. And that for me is cool. I just thought that was very, very fun. I enjoyed it.
I don't remember showing off board games in the recent videos. Maybe they're talking to you. Did you show off?
Oh, yeah, I did.
You okay?
Yeah. In my little bookshelf tour,
Okay.
I went and showed my husband's bookshelf, which was kind of a mess, and I feel bad because my husband's actually very, very tidy.
Yeah, my
But I
wife
showed
would be
her.
like, "You're removing that video." Yeah.
No, yeah, I don't play a lot of board games, but we do have some, and I played those that we have.
So,
Yeah.
what novel or series do you think deserves a board game adaptation?
Oh,
That's an interesting question.
that is a good question, though.
I mean, I already have Lord of the Rings Trivia Pursuit. So that pretty much takes care of that. That Dune game that they put out before the movie was like $60. Like, I don't like it that much, so I didn't get it. But I don't know. That's a good question.
Maybe Malazon. Yeah. Well, when I play Gloomhaven, I always think of Malazon for some reason. Even
And
though
if you do Malazon or Malazon, as I call it,
or I pronounced it wrong.
you can make it like Clue, and it could be like, "What the hell is this character?" A billion of them. You'll never figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear your thoughts when you finish it. See what you think.
It'll be something, I think, because I mean, I remember the one friend of mine who was always trying to get me to read it. The same one who got me to read Wheel of Time. Is I remember when the last book came out, I was just kind of joking. I was like, "Yeah, okay, well, let me know if it doesn't stick to landing." Just kind of joking, and like 3/4 of the book, he was like, "I feel so disappointed. I can't believe I've made this journey this long. This book is such a letdown." And then he messages me after he finishes it, and he's like, "Best book ever, best series ever, most amazing ending I've ever read in my life." Like, okay, so he must have got what he wanted at the very end of it. So
The end is it's wild. I'm still riding an emotional wave from that series. I can't promise it'll be the same for everyone. I feel like it won't, but
that's a pretty good one.
I've just not had an experience quite like that ever. And last year I finished The Lord of the Rings for the first time in my life. Even though I started it in high school, I didn't finish it until last year. And that was one of the most beautiful reading experiences I ever had in my life. And after finishing that, I thought, there's no way that another series can do for me what that series does. And it doesn't. It's different. But it carried me possibly even more on an emotional wave. And maybe part of that is because it's a longer series too. So you're more invested, you're on the journey longer, you've been with these characters forever. I don't know.
I try to think if I'll ever have that kind of emotional response to a series again, like I did with Dark Tower. I guess I did with Wheel of Time. You spend a year with that.
I can imagine so. Yeah.
Kind of have that. But I mean, just absolutely just in tears again. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be just, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. And I see Slowly Red in the chat. Cough Baker.
Oh man, between Mark and Brent, I've got to read Baker now because they won't shut up about it. I mean, they're like me with Dune and Stephen King right now. It's just like, everyone, have you read this? So I mean, it's got to happen. I just said I want to finish Malazon before I start anything else that heavy.
I might. I haven't quite 100. I'm scared to totally promise it yet, but I might start the Baker series next month. Maybe. Maybe.
Everybody tells me this about Hob, and I hope because I mean there was some stuff in Assassin's Apprentice, that really kind of got to me a little bit because I love the coming of age stuff, and now I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, obviously, if like Night Eyes gets like skewered or something, sure, I'd probably be pretty upset about that, But outside of that, I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, I gotta trust it because there's so many people whose opinions I value that just go on about Robin Hobb. I mean, again, I heard Madison talking today saying that she thinks that Live Ship Traders is passing A Song of Ice and Fire as her favorite fantasy series. And I'm like, well, Jesus.
I think Jimmy told me the same thing. And Jimmy's like the biggest A Song of Ice and Fire fan I know. Yeah.
That's wild.
He said that I think he told me he likes Hobb even better than anybody. Like the best ever. Yeah. Which is wild. Yeah. A lot of people feel that way.
You talked about how you're not really like a prose snob, I guess, something like that. I get so much for that because I'll think like, oh, someone's a great writer, and they're like, they're not that good, and I'm like, okay. But I think that when I can tell that someone has like incredible writing, they're usually pretty good. And I think I could tell that about Robin Hobb for sure.
Yeah.
Tad Williams is another one I did where the writing was just like, whoa,
That's another author. That particular trilogy, I really want to get to at some point. I just have a strong feeling I will love Tad Williams. Yeah. Yeah. When it comes to prose, it's interesting because I don't know if Philip is still in the chat. I didn't think I was I don't know, like right before starting a channel, I thought, oh, I don't really care about prose. It's just not a big deal to me. And he was at the time going on and on about how important prose was. And I think he even kind of argued with me a little bit in the gentlest, nicest Philip Chase way that prose did matter. And I think, I don't know, I wouldn't say like I said, I'm not the most analytical when it comes to prose, but I feel like I am getting a better grasp of types of writing styles that I like and seeing how it does make a difference. So I definitely think there's something to that. And I think even just the way Philip talks in his videos is just proof that, wow, the way you construct a sentence can really influence your audience.
Sure. I mean, with me, it's like I love prose, sure, but you can have the greatest prose ever. You'd be like the most amazing technical writer of all time. If I don't like your characters, I don't care. It's great. You're a great writer. How about be a great storyteller? So I always want someone that's going to be a storyteller first, So
yeah, that's happened to me a couple of times where I really like the writing style, but just didn't connect with the story. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen sometimes.
You're right, Chaz. There was the one story about the see you later alligator, that story, and Hyperion. Yeah, that one wrecked me a little bit as a parent for sure. That's cheating when it's doing parent stuff. It's cheating. So I don't know. Faithful and the Fallen, yeah, it had some stuff that got me too. You're right. So I'm just thinking, like, will I ever get to the point to where like I'm in the closing chapters of a series and I'm just in tears again? I don't know if I'll ever get to that again. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe.
Did that happen to you with Faithful and the Fallen?
No. The end of the third book got me like more like I'm just gonna like sit here and kind of like sulk for a while. I think the closest of anything I've read recently was the last book of Wheel of Time, like I said, which was more about the journey. I think just that I was actually coming to the. I didn't have for over a year. I had okay, well, I'm gonna go grab the next book, and it was the first time I had that realization of well, I don't have a next book, and like these last 30 pages are it. So that's one of those things. I did that video about books that made me cry, and I had a section called when it was about the journey. And that's definitely what Wheel of Time was about the journey. I think much more than just the content of what was happening in the book. So, yeah, with me, like Lord of the Rings, obviously Return of the King there at the end is just like, Grey Havens. And I'm just, I can't read right now. I have to go dry my eyes first,
I cried so hard at the end of the Return of the King. And I was not expecting that. And it was made all the more emotional for the fact that I didn't finish the trilogy when I was, or the standalone, whatever you want to call it, when I was a teenager. And I was thinking, I denied myself this experience for this many years of my life. So it breaks my heart when I hear people say that they can't even get through Fellowship of the Ring because they're so bored with the nature descriptions. It just breaks my heart.
Yeah, that hurts. That hurts a lot when I hear that. Yeah, but it's one of those things I always say, hey, you can't force it on anyone.
No, not at all.
It'll be something that you want to do. Don't do it because everybody else is doing it. I guess I'd better do it, kind of thing.
Well, and that's actually a good point, and that's something I think about all the time. Is like, do we really even have a choice over whether we love something or not? When it comes to reading, like sometimes I wish I could force myself to like certain books that other people like, and I just can't. And sometimes it just, it's not really in our control totally, I don't think.
Yeah, I think of some series that I was like, I don't really want to read that, but people won't leave me alone about it. I'm not going to mention what those series are, but there are some series that are on my list the next year or two. Let's leave it that way, leave it vague, that like, I'm like, right now, I'm just like, I don't necessarily know that I really want to read that, but everybody carries on about it. So I figure I'll at least, give it a try. So I am guilty of that a little bit. And it's not like I think I'm going into it with my arms crossed, something like that. It's just, it's nothing that I would be reading if I hadn't started this channel, kind of thing. And I do have some stuff like that, but I found some really great series. I probably would have never read this Bernard Cornwell if not for that,
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's awesome. It's awesome. I love getting recommendations of stuff I would never ever do before. And I'll go from like, I have no interest in reading that to being like, I want to drop everything I'm doing right now and read that right now. It's weird how You know, when you're like so excited to start a series and then you start it and then you're just like looking at this next series you have planned.
Oh, I
I
know.
do that
Yeah.
so much, so much.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I do it too. I mean, that's why I'm trying really hard to be more focused, and it's hard. It's tough, but sometimes you kind of just have to follow where the momentum takes you too. You know what I mean? Like read.
So I got a fun question for you, and I ask this
Mhm.
usually of just about everyone, and please don't say me. Who is your favorite booktuber?
Oh, oh, this question. Wow, I don't
No one's
know.
gonna be mad. No one's gonna be mad. I say Philip's mine, so you can't pick the same answer as me.
Okay.
So I'm guessing
Wow.
Alan, right? Since he's the one who really influenced you the most, right?
We'll just say Alan. Sure. I'll go with Alan.
I don't know. Alan tells me he doesn't like big books and he doesn't like popular books, and I'm just like,
Ask Alan how he feels about Toll the Hound someday when you finish it.
you know, he actually told me that when we first started this that I was gonna hate that book, and everyone else
He
told
hates
me
that
that I was
book.
gonna love that book. So I was like, but you know what? Alan has been, we and him have been kind of aligned on our opinions about Malazon. Like neither one of us like Krupp. You know, neither one of us, I forget which book, like our favorite book was the same. And I want to say some of our least favorites. I don't remember exactly the details. I just remember like as it was going along, I was like, holy crap, me and Alan are like on the sharing a brain on this one. So however he felt about the way the series ends, that's probably how I'm going to end up feeling. I just feel like you got to follow
He
that.
liked the end. And I mean, there are things he liked in Toll the Hounds. I know because I had him on my channel to talk about it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have this, Clayton. I have Where the Red Fern Grows on. I didn't rank those,
Oh,
the books
yeah.
that make me cry. But I said if I was ranking, that would be number one.
Yeah.
They made us read that in 6th grade, and the entire classroom is crying. I'm like,
Yeah.
what were you guys thinking with
That's
this?
mean.
It's just
That's
like
so
emotional
cool.
assassination. And you
Yeah.
know what? It's been that many years. 6th grade was a long time ago for me, and it still hurts. It's still,
Yeah.
that book is absolutely devastating. So anybody who's like, I don't think there's a book that can make me cry, read that. And if you don't cry, well, you might be dead.
Yeah. I read that too about that age as well. And I still remember, yeah, the
I only
experience.
like talk about it. Yeah. That's
That's a good,
great.
yeah,
Yeah. So.
that's a powerful one.
So what about like not book stuff here? You got like a favorite TV show of all time or anything like that?
Yeah. So my favorite, probably, my favorite most recent TV show, and I don't watch a lot of TV. I just, I try to spend more time reading nowadays, but Dark on Netflix. I think I mentioned that.
So good, wasn't it?
Yeah. Love that show.
Did you finish it?
I did. Yeah. 3
Oh my
seasons and
God.
finishes. I just thought it was brilliant. I mean, it was incredible that it wrapped up in 3 seasons. It doesn't drag on, because I've started a lot of really seemingly promising shows on Netflix that just, I feel like they just drag on and
I
are
think
no
just having a
longer.
planned 3-season plan that really helped it a lot because they had a beginning, middle, and end. So they knew where they were going the whole time. They didn't try to make stuff up. But I think that was the first show since Lost was at its peak where me and my wife were like obsessed with like theorizing and stuff, like between seasons, like, okay, this, and this. I mean, she actually had like a whiteboard and she was like actually like drawing like the lines and stuff of how everything connected to stuff. And she was almost right on most of it. So I'll give her credit for that. I was way off on my things, but God, man, it was so good. It blew me away.
That show was brilliant. I mean, it lived up to its name. I mean, time travel is one of my favorite things. I think it's probably from growing up in the 80s and 90s and having Back to the Future on loop in my household growing up. But I love time travel stories. And I think that the way that they handled the time travel, plus the forbidden love trope, which is another one of my favorite tropes of all time, was just masterful. It was absolutely masterful.
Yeah, when I talked about like my favorite sci-fi shows of all time, and I had that on there. And someone told me like I told them watch it with the native language and just do the subtitles. And they were like, "Oh, I don't really want to read it." I'm like, "Bro, this is a reading channel. And you're telling me you don't want to read it?"
Yeah.
So because if you do the dub, it's so distracting. It's so distracting. So just read the show. That's the best way to do it. And it really. God, it was so good, man. It was so good.
I actually did do the dubbed one. And I think I probably watched it with subtitles anyway, because I just watch everything with subtitles. But I do need to rewatch it with the German and with the subtitles.
It's one of those things. It seems like it's hard for me to get anybody to watch it, but people that do watch it are like, "Oh, this is amazing," So
it's
they really
brilliant.
like it.
It is brilliant, and it is complicated. I mean, I think it's not for
It'll make
I
your
think
head
it's
hurt a
only,
few times.
yeah, because there are so many characters and storylines. If you like complex sci-fi, please watch Dark. It is so good. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, well, I mean, what about of all time? Do you have a favorite TV show of all time? Like something you would rewatch over and over again?
Um, Not really. I know this might sound weird, but when I was younger, I'm trying to think. What did I watch growing up? I mean, I watched a lot of movies over and over growing up. I know when I was growing up in the 90s, it was kind of funny because I actually got sucked into watching what's the name of the show? Northern Exposure.
Oh yeah.
And it's so funny because for years and years and years, I would be channel surfing and I'd see the moose walking around the town. And I was like, who watches that? That looks like it's the most boring show on the face of the earth. Who would make a show like that? And who would watch it? It looks so boring. And then one day I forced myself to watch it just because I had to understand why people would watch or make such boring TV with like a moose walking around an empty town. And I was completely hooked. I just was shocked. And I became kind of really into Northern Exposure, but I didn't even watch every single episode of that show, but I loved it. I just loved the small town Alaska setting and the sort of, like I said, again, the Native American indigenous cultural influence in there. I liked just the banter, the characters. I liked that it was all about the characters at a time when TV at that time felt like it was all about how much money people had. And that particular show was not about the lifestyle and not about being fancy. It was about really the characters and the friendships and the banter. I thought it was brilliant. I loved it.
That's why I like Twin Peaks. Yeah, I can see
Oh
that.
yeah, Twin Peaks is crazy. That's a cool show.
Well, my internet's going stupid, so I think I'm going to go ahead and tell us we should wrap this up because I have no idea why it switched to Wi-Fi on me out of nowhere, and the Wi-Fi is not that good. So AT&T guys, AT&T. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this on a work night and things like that. I know that's a really high commitment and things like that, and we all have lots of stuff to do and all that. But I want to thank you so much for joining me. It's been a blast. I feel like we'll probably talk for at least another hour, probably.
Absolutely. It's been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for saying yes. I was really, really happy that you agreed to do it because I know a lot of people not only they really shy about doing that, they're shy about doing this live. So there's that. But hey, I had a kid walk in the first minute of the video, guys. So don't feel bad. Do some stuff live. It's fun. It's fun. So guys, make sure you sub to her channel. I'm going to link it in the description below, or you can just find her as Johanna. So there you go, guys. You want your social media? Where can they find you there?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter on @JohannaReads, and I'm also on Instagram. And my Instagram handle is @WhatResonates. I also have that information on my YouTube channel as well. So yeah, please come follow me. Let's be friends. Talk fantasy.
All righty. We'll talk to you guys very, very soon. Thank you.
All right. Bye.